My name is Stretto. Welcome to episode 7 of Pink Elephant Foxtrot, Sleeper Wave. Shortly after I graduated college, I got very sick and had to go to the emergency room. The doctor gave me two options. I could either destroy my stomach with antibiotics, or I could get a single injection instead. I hate needles, but I went for the shot. Who wouldn't? I was walking towards the exit when I was overtaken by a very odd feeling. The room began to spin wildly, and it felt like I was swimming through jello. I kept walking towards the door until I finally felt the sleeper wave overtake me as I lost consciousness. In November of 2021, I took a series of photographs that changed my life, and the sleeper wave that overtook me at the hospital returned. The images taken on November 14th in particular are the most inexplicable. I will be sharing the most shocking of those images with you soon in future episodes. They depict an intelligently controlled procedure which was repeated several times each night. It utilized a technology that resembles a combination of art and magic, and looks nearly identical to an image that was created for Storyboard of a Dream several months earlier. For the next few months, I struggled to keep my head above water with an apocalyptic pink elephant doing the foxtrot on my back. The weight was unbearable, but still, I had a lot of empathy for my elephant. Like me, it seemed lost between dimensions, and neither of us would give in and ask for directions home. It was on another November 14th, this one 17 years earlier in 2004, that something very similar occurred to a naval officer named Kevin Day. In November of 2004, Kevin Day was serving in the Navy on the USS Princeton, working in conjunction with the Nimitz 100 miles southwest of San Diego. Day was responsible for identifying objects tracked by radar, and he was present when the infamous Tic Tac UAP incident occurred. There were several other strange sightings in the days leading up to the Tic Tac incident, and afterwards, Day was haunted. There was a message communicated within the medium of simply seeing these objects, and that message was strikingly similar to the warning about technology and the environment imparted to the schoolchildren at the Ariel School in Zimbabwe. In an interview with the late Harvard professor and child psychiatrist John Mack, one of the children put it this way: "I think they want people to know that we're actually making harm on this planet, and we mustn't get too technologued." In subsequent interviews, Kevin Day described how his head became overwhelmed by a sleeper wave of disturbing, apocalyptic imagery, something that had never happened to him before. He had no prior history of sleep disturbances, but after this incident, he started having nightmares involving comets impacting the ocean, forest fires, earthquakes, and tsunamis. In the weeks after my own November 14th sighting, 17 years to the day after Kevin Day's, I experienced the same thing, and the disturbing imagery was not isolated to my dreams. During the day, my mind was completely permeated by a sense of impending doom and an urgency to share these photographs before it was too late. I found myself on edge and agitated. I didn't know what to do with the imagery and urgency looping in my head, the questions that permeated my thoughts, or the sense of foreboding I felt. I have always been enthralled with and inspired by nature, but in the months that followed this experience, I found myself deeply touched by the overwhelming beauty that we take for granted on a daily basis. My senses were on fire and focused on how precious our planet is. The simple gesture of a bird flying by would cause me to tear up with emotion, and these feelings were somehow intertwined with Storyboard of a Dream. It was only about halfway done, and finishing it became a priority. In England, they call bullhorns loud hailers. Loud Hailer is a recurring segment on Pink Elephant Foxtrot that explores the pink elephants of politics, pop culture, and technology. This installment focuses on a sleeper wave called fascism. It is paired with the image from row 3, window 4 of Storyboard of a Dream that shares the same name as the essay, Life in a Binary Thugocracy, Off with Their Head. The name of this row is called Stairway to Hell, which is about the intersection of fascism and modern technology. In this row, the newels and many elements of the stairway in the source photo are left unsaturated. Note the squiggly orange lines in the pool at the bottom of the image. This is their first appearance, but they will be back. Tyranny is the imposition of a mercurial, cruel, binary ideology upon an analog society. Fascism is a bit more focused. It utilizes an extreme nationality and nativism that encourages racism, violence, conformity, demonization of targeted enemies, and contempt for the democratic process. Creating a thugocracy is essential to the success of fascism. Artists and intellectuals across the globe know about this firsthand. The three recurring notes in the first movement of Shostakovich's String Quartet No. 7 are widely interpreted as the three knocks in the middle of the night the composer was subject to, time and again, living under Stalin's watchful eye. America has not shied away from using similar tactics on its artists either. The infamous House Un-American Activities Committee, or HUAC, headed by Senator Joseph McCarthy in the 1940s and 50s, was a government-sponsored Three Knocks in the Night campaign that was also based on a distortion and manipulation of reality. Arthur Miller painted it for what it was in his play The Crucible, a witch hunt by people poisoned with ideological ergot. Sound familiar? Utilizing a compliant press, Congress used the HWAC to target the entertainment industry, creating a literal blacklist that ruined the careers of thousands, including average citizens. Blacklisted writers worked under pseudonyms for pennies on the dollar, or simply starved, and people who cooperated with the committee, like film director Elia Kazan, didn't escape a blacklist. He was shunned in Hollywood for testifying, and his career was never the same. The point is, there is no winning with fascists, except for Shostakovich. Technology has always been used to facilitate this stairway to hell, but now there are monkeys with matches lining up to slide down a cyber banister. Think of it as the hijacked weaponization of author William S. Burroughs' famous quote, "Destroy all rational thought." Burroughs was referring to the use of language, but it's literal now, not literary. There seems to be a rationality override switch inside human beings, which I believe the psychologist Carl Jung would have called the Surrender Dorothy archetype. It goes something like this. Surrender all individual thought, all reality and morality, all power to me, my pretties, and together we shall conquer our scapegoated enemies and then the world. It's irresistible and effective when used as an ad campaign, and it worked swimmingly for Kristallnacht. Surrender Dorothy seems to be very popular again. It doesn't sound exactly the same when translated from the German, but it rhymes enough to get the point across. Human beings share 84% of their DNA with dogs, so maybe it is no wonder that as a species we're a sucker for a charismatic leader with strange grooming who's rolled in something that stinks, which, by the way, rhymes with pink. Rhyme is a powerful pattern, one which our brains find irresistible. Just ask any fan of hip-hop. One would think it would be hard to find a rhyme for Schicklgruber, Hitler's original surname before his father changed it, but somehow America has found a way. Not convinced? Look for the purges. It begins when politicians start eating their own. Liz Cheney comes to mind. After that, they go for the intellectuals and the infirm. For that, look no further than Mickey Mouse. Kicking it back to the old-school fascism of the 20th century, from 1936 to 1938, a paranoid Stalin executed or imprisoned all his perceived enemies, and there were many. Nearly 1 million people were either murdered outright or sent to gulags, never to be heard from again. In the end, Shostakovich was lucky. He was about to be purged, but his interrogator was arrested before the interview. There is a rhyme that is germinating in America today, and it has an accent by way of Nuremberg and Moscow. Don't want to roll over for our foul-smelling alpha dog? Off with their head. The purges have begun. Just ask Mickey Mouse. He's been blacklisted in Florida. And he's a cartoon. Next on Pink Elephant Foxtrot, Culture Crunch, a recurring segment that examines the many pink elephants in the arts. This episode focuses on analog versus digital technology and is called Sleeper Wave. Did you ever turn your back on the ocean long enough to get hit by a sleeper wave? No matter how many times it happens, getting soaked always makes me feel indignant. It's hard to believe that there are people who can feel that big wave approaching. Billions of dollars have been made by savvy investors who knew when to ride the tide or get out of the way. But more often than not, the sleeper waves that hit us personally and the ones that affect society the most are the least predictable. On February 7th, 1964, America was hit by a cultural tsunami when the Beatles landed at JFK in New York. Thousands of screaming fans greeted them as they disembarked, and the roar was so deafening it drowned out the plane's engines.
Well, the Beatles arrived in New York today and advanced almost to the Hudson. The four English musical stars with their pudding bowl haircuts were greeted by about 4,000 shrieking teenagers at Kennedy Airport and mobbed by another large group of juveniles when they got to the Plaza Hotel.
Disoriented, the four mop-tops were shuffled inside the terminal for their first press conference. And what a press conference it was. America had just lost its most optimistic leader, and as a nation, we really needed some distraction. The Beatles delivered, and then some.
Be quiet, please.
Please sing something.
No! Sorry.
Next question. It turns out that you can sing.
No, we need money first.
They got our attention with their humor and innocent three-minute toe tappers, but as they drew us in, their music and their message became far more complex. I don't think anyone was expecting this trajectory. In their early interviews, even the Beatles thought they'd only last for a couple of years. By the time Sgt. Pepper was released, it was so revolutionary that it saturated the globe. By then, it was no longer just about the music. Politics, fashion, sexual liberation, freedom of expression. All of it changed radically, almost overnight. None of this could have happened without the use of technology, but much of the technology in the 60s and 70s, particularly multi-track recording, was analog and relatively new. Human beings are curious creatures, and our minds are not binary. Nations' analog technology tended to inspire us to make truly unique works of art because of, or sometimes in spite of, its inherent limitations. The Beatles created something wholly unique, and their music has far outlived the limited technology it was created on. Perhaps it's because analog technology places human beings in the driver's seat. It forces us to take an active role and spend time pressing buttons and turning knobs. And analog equipment had lots of buttons and knobs. When the sleeper wave of digital ones and zeros hit, almost anything seemed possible. But in the end, it was a total wipeout that left us submerged and gasping for air. Binary technology ended up inhibiting creativity. It led to a sort of dehumanization of music. Everything became quite homogenized after the digital revolution. Instruments were replaced by computers, and features like quantization have removed the human element by regimenting the beat like a metronome. Even the human voice is being held hostage by auto-tuning and lip-syncing. And when those ones and zeros go wrong, it can be very embarrassing.
And this is true. Girl, you know it's 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 girl.
On a Monday, I am waiting. Tuesday, I am fading.
We've gotten to the point that using pre-recorded tracks, like Milli Vanilli and Ashlee Simpson did, has careened past acceptable and is now considered old school. Recently, a reunion tour of Emerson, Lake, and Palmer was announced, despite the fact that both Greg Lake and Keith Emerson are, along with Generalissimo Francisco Franco, still dead. Drummers playing along with holograms. It used to be quite different. Have a listen to some early recordings of Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Django Reinhardt, Jelly Roll Morton, Fats Waller, or Sidney Bechet. Every one of those recordings was done in one take, with absolutely no edits or overdubs. I have often wondered what it would be like if modern artists were forced to record the way they did in the 1920s. Turns out I wasn't alone. Guitarist Jack White has been obsessed with vinyl his whole life. He has been a major force behind a resurgence that has seen albums outselling CDs in recent years, but his understanding of all things analog goes far deeper. In a 2017 PBS documentary called American Epic, White and producer T-Bone Burnett recorded 20 contemporary artists using a recording lathe from the 1920s. Each artist got one take to record about 3 minutes of music onto a 78 RPM disc. It's a fascinating project because it illustrates just how special those early recordings are and how much work was involved in cutting just one side. Some of the artists White and Burnett recorded might not have been as successful if they had lived in an era without multi-track recording. But others, like Rhiannon Giddens, seemed completely at ease with the medium. Her one-take version of Ida Cox's 1 Hour Mama outshines the technology, which goes to show there is no hologram for artistry. Not yet, at least. Thanks for tuning in to episode 7 of Pink Elephant Foxtrot. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Music was by Tom Young. If you are interested in ordering fine art prints of Apparition City, UAP, or Storyboard of a Dream images, or if you would like to become a sponsor of the show, get in touch. Stretto@pinkelephantfoxtrot.com. Coming up on episode 8 of Pink Elephant Foxtrot, Apocalypse and Post-Apocalypse. Many civilizations have faced an apocalypse. The one we face today is both environmental and socio-political. On the next installment of Loud Hailer, we take a look at the roots of our current cultural polarization. And on Culture Crunch, when your own pocket universe collapses, renewed expansion can only be accomplished with a tether and an appreciation for others who have struggled even harder. Join us on episode 8 when we examine the artistry and complex political views of Louis Armstrong. Don't miss it.